Hello, and welcome to Faces for Equality, where we focus on benevolent work from around the world and the humanitarian faces behind them. I'm your host, Lauren Collins.
Or maybe it's just the quarantine starting to get to me.
Never.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to kind of fill in some of the pieces from our last conversation about On the Move Art Studio, and I guess I will begin with, where are you at now? How has COVID, or if it has, COVID-19, has it affected you with what you're able to do? Are there any limitations, and how do you personally feel during this space of your life, all of our lives?
Yeah. Unfortunately, just like with any other like school-related thing or kids-related thing, our program is suspended. So it started happening kind of incrementally. The first to go was actually our program at the Juvenile Detention Center. They were one of the first. They were very proactive. They sent out a thing saying, hey, no more visitors, no more outside programming, no more nothing until this clears. And we used to go to the Juvenile Detention Center every Friday to do arts classes with the kids in there.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, so it was 5 classes a day. And we've been doing it for over a year. So that was kind of the first thing to go. Then some of the schools we work with started closing. And then it kind of hit that tipping point where it was like, ooh, we don't want to be the only one doing programming, and for the safety of everybody, we suspended our programming. So as of right now, we're not doing anything. So in terms of serving kids, there's been a few things where we've kind of partnered a little bit and have organized some art supply boxes. I put this thing, there's this group called Lexington Mutual Aid, where it's like people putting what they need and people putting what they can give. So I said, hey, if anybody needs any art supplies during this time, let us know. And there were about 10 people that reached out. So I put together little kits and then just like drop them off for people.
Oh, fantastic. That's everything already. Cool. To be able to express like the creativity still during a time in which we're trying to find ways to create and be creative when we are lacking the space, like when it comes to being confined in your actual space, or not able to be in a brick and mortar like a school or a mobile home or whatever it is that provides you that extracurricular. It's so amazing to hear that you found that way to still have the donations and to help people that now are at home. Wow, how is that going?
I mean, it's really cool. I wish we could do more, but then it's this tricky thing of like, if we go out and buy more supplies, then we're in kind of a financial tricky situation, because a lot of our fundraising comes from like public events where, they're birthday parties, they are canvas painting nights. There's basically a lot of our fundraising comes from events that have humans at them.
Right.
And so now that there's no chances to have humans. So we've lost about $7,000 so far in different like fundraisers and things that we had lined up. So that's been a bummer for sure. So yeah, as of right now, I'm just trying to use this time to like organize some things, apply for some grants. We've had a couple of our employees who were like art instructors. They've gone on unemployment because there's no more classes. They were only paid to like teach classes, and I wish we could pay them to do other stuff, but grants work, we can't. But Kentucky's actually been really great at like the unemployment system and getting people the help they need. So yeah, as of right now, we're not doing anything. So sad times.
I'm so sorry to hear about like the deficits and the very real implications that like COVID-19 has affected it. I'm just gonna call it pandemic. That this pandemic has like had the trickle down process for such amazing initiatives, and because our users have yet to hear about the full entity of your initiative, your program, your company, or everything. Can you explain? Can you do us the honor in explaining what On the Move Art Studio is?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So On the Move Art Studio is a nonprofit. We go to low-income neighborhoods and underserved areas and provide free arts classes for children. We use a trailer, an old vintage trailer that we renovated into an art room. So we've been around for a little over 4 years, and so we've served about 32,000 kids so far in Central Kentucky. And so, yeah, that's what we do. It's free what we do, and we do it by request. So like one major thing that's really important to me that we do is we don't show up uninvited. A lot of times in community work, people can go into neighborhoods thinking they're going to save them. It's like you and I talked about them, like, oh, these people need saving. We just say, hey, everybody, we exist. Let us know if you want us to come. If you think this is an appropriate resource for the kids in your neighborhood, let us know. And by that approach, we're booked out like 2 seasons in advance. So by February, our spring and our summer were 100% booked. So that part is important to me because, again, in this kind of work, people sometimes impose things on people, and we want to make sure we don't do that. We just say, hey, call us up, if you want us to come. So it's totally community driven. So that is a little bit about On the Move Art Studio.
Oh, thank you so much. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Everything that you're doing, that you're up to, and everything that will resume in due time on the other side of the pandemic. But also, I love your point, and this is something I've just learned now about the upon request. I think that is so niche and very beautiful that you guys have clocked that as the way in which you provide your resources, because I have heard and I've studied and seen in some of my understandings that it's a very like you can get kind of trapped in that whole like savior aspect when it comes to charity work, and not in all cases.
Yeah.
In most cases the intentions are like so amazing. It's just a unfortunate downside or downfall in some cases for some organizations that had a really good mind and heart, with their organization. However, the fact that yours is upon request, it kind of negates that aspect to where it's like, oh no, you've requested us, and I really love this. That is something that's unlike anything I've heard.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, and the other part what we try to do too is, so there's some stuff that can be requested, but then what happens is there's so much red tape. So coming from a social work aspect, one of my goals is like, all right, we're going to create this resource. People can ask us to come, but we're also going to make the barrier to access very, very, very low. We're not going to have you fill out 20 forms and then send us proof of ID and proof of income and all this kind of stuff. If you determine that your neighborhood can benefit from this, then we're going to come, as long as we have it in our schedule, an opening in our schedule. But that's the other thing, is that some resources out there are so difficult to obtain. It makes the attempt to get them almost in vain. Some people were like, oh, what's the point? I'm going to be on hold for 3 hours. Sometimes I even thought about so I teach at UK and I have social work students, and I thought about making it a homework assignment to call the food stamp office just to feel what it feels like. Sometimes you're on hold for 3 hours and then you get somebody who's like rude to you.
Wow.
So the point being, we didn't want it to be this very inaccessible thing. We wanted to be like, all right, if you need it and we can be there, we'll be there.
genuinely, my hat or beanie, as I'm presently wearing, is so off to you, because that is phenomenal. And you're so right. Like, it's so hard to remove bureaucracy out of most things. And politics is like always intertwined somehow. But to lessen that kind of buildup and also exacerbation on some of the systems, but also the problems that lie within these structures. That's everything, because people just need it to be easily available, the things that are important, and your organization is so important for communities. And I really like hearing that this is made possible with so much less red tape, if any, because that's everything. And you're so right. We've all been on the line with like banks alone for ages, and it's like, well, who's serving who? I thought America was like all about the customer service experience, but the patience gets very tested in our ideas of that.
Totally, yeah.
So that's so neat to hear. And actually, it reminds, you're welcome. It reminds me of something that I wanted to ask you as well, when you were saying your social work class. So can you speak a little bit more, if possible, on how your social work background, first of all, I guess telling the audience about your social work background, but how it kind of intertwines and relates to how you're able to start this organization on your own, and just what helps you in the understanding?
Totally, yeah. So my actual background is social work. So I have my master's degree in social work. So I'm the co-founder of On the Move Art Studio. Kathy Working is the co-founder with me. So I'm the social worker, she's the artist. So Kathy is an incredible local artist. And so together we kind of brought our skill sets. So I had a lot of, a decent amount of knowledge about how to start a nonprofit. You know, I actually, part of my master's program was I had to take a class called nonprofit management. So there was that aspect of learning about how to start a nonprofit legally. And then my other concentration was family and community development. So there's a lot of studies in like how to create resources for large amounts of people. So just trying to bring that kind of aspect of, you know, a big part of social work. When you're a social worker, you're essentially trying to find resources for people. You're trying to connect people with the resources they need to be self-sufficient and thrive. And, you know, I kind of, based on the way I grew up, this was kind of a dream of mine, was like, all right, when I get to a certain age, I would like to create a resource for people. Because I started noticing, like we just talked about, there's either A, not resources available, or B, the resources are so hard to get to. So I was like, all right, well, we're going to fix that. So that's kind of how, just trying to bring in, so again, with social work, you're taught not to be paternalistic. You don't want to decide for people what they need. So I try to bring that into what we do. So we just try to listen a lot. We try to see where we can fit in to the puzzle of community work and contribute where we can.
Hi, it's me, Lauren, with Faces for Equality. I'm speaking with special guest Josh Nadzem on the Move Art Studio. Thank you so much for tuning in so far, and tune in for more.
Oh my gosh. Again, I'm wearing so many hats to tip off in your direction.
Oh, please.
So that's absolutely incredible.
Thank you.
That's a dream, because you have found a way to use your academic background and also what is exuding from you, your passion, and make it into something that betters the world, the community. And I get that from you and your personality and knowing you. But also, it's so amazing to know that it's represented in an organization that does right by children and the community, and who doesn't like that? So that's
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, we try. We can do a lot better, but I appreciate what you're saying. Thanks, Lauren.
Of course, you're right. And so with that, actually, on who you are as a person. Not going to overanalyze you, but how would you say that like you as an individual plays into what you were able to create? Like what inspired you to begin this type of adventure?
Yeah, I mean, the main thing was kind of like I alluded to. So in my head, these aren't just like kids we're serving. These are kids who grew up like I did. So the neighborhood I grew up in was very poor, lots of drugs, lots of crime. I come from a very broken family. My family has growing up had a lot of issues with addiction and poverty and domestic violence, and the first 18 years of my life were chaos, basically. It was a lot of bad stuff that happened. Pretty much the way I remember each year is like what traumatic thing happened that year. So it was just kind of like my hope was like, if I ever make it out of this, I would like to create something that could help kids who grew up like me. Because while everybody's experience is unique, I can at least relate somewhat to what they may be going through. So I know when you live in a neighborhood, so like I remember realizing when I got older, some of my friends, their parents would say, don't you go to that neighborhood or you're grounded. And it's an interesting thing. And I think that's the right call. They shouldn't have come to my neighborhood. But it's a weird dynamic to know that like you live in the very neighborhood that other kids get punished if they go to. It's like, oh, wow, this is what I open the door and walk out into every day. And it could have always been worse. I don't want to like exaggerate it, but it was bad. It was just a lot of things that I wish I didn't see. So I think that has always stuck with me and has made this very personal and very urgent. You know, it's not just like a cute idea that will look cool on social media. It's like, no, this is like what I really want to do. And here's how we're going to do it. And I'm not going to go away until we do it.
Right. So, well, thank you for sharing that with me and with our viewers. And importantly, I, as a friend, I'm proud of you and everything that you've overcome, because I could only imagine how that wasn't easy. And it's definitely very lucky and hard earnestly earned that you are a really strong individual, considering everything that you've overcome. So,
well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Of course, you're so welcome. Don't even.
Well, fine.
I'm turning more and more British nowadays, where like I don't accept compliments well. I'm like, oh God. That's like a thing there.
You're saying you don't accept compliments well?
Yeah, which is like a stereotypically like British thing, and maybe I've just been around it a lot after like always being like, oh my gosh, thank you to my peers, and you're amazing, and of course some people like they're like, oh wow, well thanks, but it's a stereotype that it's like, oh okay, like please stop, like what is this?
Interesting. Yeah. Well, it's especially interesting because you were complimenting me, and I just said, thank you. And so you're saying like even that was too much. Like,
yeah.
I'm just thanking you for your compliment. So, wow, that's interesting.
Yeah. Oh no.
That's fascinating.
But you're welcome. I was kidding. So I also was wondering, how do you? Let's see, because everything that you went through. Does it give you any, I'm trying to think of how to word this, sorry. Did you have fears going into it? Like, did you feel like anything in your upbringings or just you as a person and what you've gone through, for better or for worse, were there any things that made you feel like you would have to overcome when starting your own organization? Or did it just give you the like veracity to keep going? And like kind of speak on that, if that's anything.
Yeah, sure. I'd say it's a couple things. I'd say one is, in a weird way, I never had a doubt that this would work. And I don't mean that in like an arrogant way. I just meant that like I believed in this so much that I knew that no matter what happened, I would just find a way to like make it work in the most persistent way. So like I never doubted it for a second that this was the right thing to do. But then just personally, I knew that in the pursuit of this, there would be several things I'd have to overcome. So just, different things like, when I realized like when I would be in a room full of like very wealthy individuals, I would immediately feel very inadequate. It would kind of just overwhelm me. I would go back to these, you and I were talking before about like labels and stuff. And in my head, I had this self-label of white trash. Growing up with Project, Section 8, food stamps, welfare, most of my friends are on drugs or they're dead. And I think I grew up with the notion in my head of like, oh, I'm just white trash. And it would be easy to kind of like ignore that until I was in a room full of people to me represent the opposite of that. Rich people in suits, very distinct, very proper. And in my head, I would kind of think like, oh, you're just this Josh kid from the projects. You shouldn't be here. So I knew that I'd have to like, that was going to be a thing. And it still sometimes happens, to be honest. And I have to remember to like talk that down and remember like that is just a concept in my head that I've created. So there's things like that kind of pop up, with that. And then also just not doubting myself. So like while I never doubted the idea of this, sometimes I would doubt myself. Like it's kind of like climbing up a mountain and you're doing great, but then you look down and you're like, oh crap. So every once in a while I would metaphorically look down and realize like, oh, wait a minute. Should I even be the person who's speaking in front of these 200 people? Should I even be the person who's meeting with the CEO of the bank? And so that was something, and still sometimes I have to slow that down when those doubts creep in. So I'd say those are some of the things that I encounter that I have to overcome.
That's phenomenal, and beautiful analogies as well. I feel like so many people, myself included, could definitely relate to that type of feeling of being like, yeah, let's do this. And then you're doing it and you're like, am I all right to do this? Like,
yeah.
Am I worthy of doing this? Or just kind of like, how can I have people believe me that I'm the one to be able to do this? But so important to like know that like you've got this. Literally.
Yeah, it would be this weird thing of like I would chase what I'm passionate about and just freaking go for it, because I believe just leaving the net will appear. If you believe in it, go for it, do it. So I would do that, and then it would be like I'd be doing the thing. And then people would be like, hey, we like that thing. We're going to support you. We're going to follow you. And then it would get to the point where I would kind of look up and be like, wait a minute. Why do these people see me as a leader? Oh, God, I'm not a leader. No. So it's just this ironic cycle. Like, go do the thing. People say, hey, we like that thing. We want to support you. Then I'm like, okay, great, thanks. But wait a minute. Why are you supporting me? Like, I'm not, So just having to recognize that like, whoa, it's wild. So
no, that's really well said. And thank you for sharing that. What do you feel like when you're like, wait a second, and looking on either side of you, do you feel like our audience doesn't know this, but you are an athlete. Josh is an athlete, everyone. Really good.
Whoa.
He is like a track star, genuinely. And so I think that your like some of your motivation and your tenacity like must come from that element in you that like allows you to be so good at what you do on the field as well. But do you feel like as you personally feel like your sports and the athleticism and the mind that you develop from all of it, does that help you overcome, knowing that like you've got this, Josh? Like, does it kind of seem like it's like a yin and yang, like it works together? They're different, but it works.
Yeah, it's interesting that you asked that, because I've thought about that a lot before. It's like, so I grew up, playing football and basketball, and especially in football. Like in football, you are just pummeled with the idea of like fight through the pain and like give it 1,000%. Same thing with running, track and field. So in a way, I've essentially applied that same kind of thing, sometimes to my own detriment, where like I would put so much effort into this thing that some days I would just be utterly exhausted. But I always felt like I could push past whatever limit there is. So it was basically like, all right, well, I'm not a football player anymore, but I'm going to apply those same principles to this thing. So I think in some ways it's definitely helped, for sure.
Oh, that's really encouraging. And I'm sure there's, we know there's so many young girls and boys and men and women that are into sports. It's a worldwide phenomenon. And knowing that you can use this, like if you didn't become the, professional athlete that you had dreamt of, myself included, I thought I was going to be a soccer star by now, but shifted the dreams. But internalizing the things that I've learned and kind of looking in, oh yeah, sure, if I can use it to help with a vision and idea, then sure. And it's neat to hear that like yours has affected the work that you do, and the ability to overcome some of the fears and the struggles that you might have been faced with. That kind of competitiveness as well is like really nice, I feel like, for being able to put that into your passion without competitiveness separating people, because as you and I have discussed in a previous conversation, collaboration is so great. And so actually speaking on that note, how do you feel about others wanting to start an organization and worrying about similarities of other organizations, or just not having someone steal your ideas, or maybe it's not even stealing, but just kind of feeling like all the things are out there already, and how your idea and vision can contribute at a time when we have access to so much?
Yeah, so I think, I don't know, I have a couple thoughts on that. One is like, first and foremost, like you said, collaboration is key, and you want to make sure you're partnering with people who are already doing the work, because there is a limited amount of dollars out there for nonprofits. If there's a domestic violence shelter that has existed for 40 years and they do great work, it might be better if you partner with them versus starting your own shelter, because there might not be just enough money to go around to start your own shelter. So I think, not reinventing the wheel, and making sure like you listen to your community, like what is available in our community and what gaps exist. On that same notion, I've thought about this a lot. This is going to be kind of a weird comment and probably not very popular, but I think about it like, right now, Lauren, if you were like, hey, I want to start a t-shirt company, nobody would ever be like, hey, Lauren, actually, there's already Adidas and Nike. Like, there's already enough t-shirt companies out there. So, no. So I wonder, like, in the same way with nonprofits, I understand, like, you don't want to compete or whatever, but there could never be enough help. So while I think collaboration is key, if somebody is out there doing the idea, it doesn't mean like, oh, there's already one of those, there can't be any more. So I'd say like there's like a balance there somewhere where you can collaborate, but don't be afraid to still go do the thing, because the other thing is you might do it better than them. And the question becomes, why don't poor people deserve choices? Like if somebody came up with another mobile art studio here in Lexington and they did it better than us and blew us out of the water, I'd be like, you know what? That's a bummer, but the kids are getting a higher quality service, so we yield to them. When there's no competition, then that means people in poverty have one thing to choose from. And what if it's crappy? So I have this thought, but again, like, it's not the traditional talking point, you know, like I've never actually heard anybody say that. So I'm almost reluctant to say that.
Yeah.
Because everybody normally goes to the collaboration and, you know, don't reinvent the wheel, which I totally agree with. But I've also had this other thought of like, hey, poor people deserve choices too. And competition makes us better. So like my track coach at UK, Don Weber, he got me to really think, he loved this one quote that says, I love my competitors because they bring out the best in me. So like, if there was another mobile art studio that popped up, we would probably think, oh, okay, well, if we're both applying for this grant, we need to step our stuff up, which then the kids benefit from. If everybody's trying to improve their services, that's good. So again, it might not be the popular thing, but I think it's okay to try for something that already exists, because again, what if you can do it better, you know? Am I allowed to say that? I don't know. I'm scared.
No, this is so wonderful. I'm really glad that you said it. This is something that I could hear all day long, and maybe others feel the same way, because like what you said, there are different ways to think of it. And though yours might be not as orthodox, it's so unique to hear the other side being like, wait a second, you're right, you know, and just being like, wait, who is kind of holding the monopoly on t-shirts or concepts or ideas? Like, that shouldn't be the case.
Yeah, like imagine this. Imagine how screwed up this would be. We've been in Lexington for 4.5 years doing free arts classes for kids. Imagine some up-and-coming young woman has this idea and she's like, I want to do that too. Imagine if we were like, excuse me, miss. I can't even say it without laughing. Excuse me, miss, but we already do that. So if you could just not do that, that'd be cool. Then what happens is it becomes about us, like the ego, like we already do that, so therefore you should not pursue that. That would be, in my opinion, kind of toxic.
Oh.
The utopian approach would be, hey, young adult, that's awesome. Let's see if we can collaborate, but go for it. There should be 17 mobile art studios everywhere. There should be 45 per neighborhood. So again, sometimes I think there's a temptation to make it about yourself. Like, I started this and nobody else will ever duplicate what we're doing. No, just like chill out. Like, what's it really about? Is it about the people or is it about yourselves? You know?
Well said. I want to be like, preach. Like, that's so true.
I don't know.
I'm certain that there's so much truth to that. I feel like that's really refreshing, actually, to hear that, like, okay, you know, ideas can be something to come into fruition, and, you know, it can become the organization that you've always dreamt of, or your idea can be more than just on paper. It can like speak volumes and it can affect change. And these kinds of things I'm getting from what you've said. It doesn't just like kind of stamp it out altogether as, nope, already done. That's going to be the case for everything. I mean, even music is often repeated in different ways when it comes to the actual components of the sound. That's been on repeat for like centuries.
Yeah.
Similar thing with film, you know, working with also what works and concepts, the ways that we think of things. So I really like that. Glad that you've said.
Well, thanks. Yeah, I mean, yeah, like what you're saying, I mean, we could have a whole separate discussion of who owns the thought. Like if I say the words, the tree is green and tall, like, do I forever own those 4 or 5 words? You know, like, I don't know. I mean, you don't want to like flat out copy what somebody's doing and market it as your own and plagiarize, but also like, who owns the thought? You know, I don't know. Yeah, I've heard this debate in music and stuff too. Like you're saying, it's like eventually, in theory, there is a limit to how many words we can arrange. And you're going to run out of, like, you can only say, the woman is so pretty 20 different times. Then eventually you're like, oh, wow, okay. There's no way other,
Pretty woman.
Yeah. Pretty woman, woman pretty.
Dang it, taken.
Girl pretty. Yeah.
You're so right. I really like that. Thank you.
Faces for Equality.
Actually, speaking to that type of understanding of like, wait a second, there's so many different ways to go about this and to think of things and to expand great ideas to help people and communities. How would you say that your particular organization is unique to the area, unique to you, to other NGOs out there? I mean, I'm biased. I find it to be insanely unique and just so brilliant. I've never heard of anything like it. I absolutely love it. It's genius. But
thank you.
You're welcome. What's your take on the uniqueness of your organization?
Yeah, I guess just the what has allowed us to be successful is the mobile approach, which was not our plan. We were actually trying to start an art center, a physical brick and mortar center, and it was going to be a replication of another art center in Pittsburgh. And we couldn't raise the money to do that. So they were like, all right, what if we start small? What if we start something mobile? And that's kind of how that got started. But yeah, we quickly realized that, like, you could have the most beautiful center in the world, but if kids can't get to it, then what's the point? And we all know how complicated traffic is and transportation. So I think that's what I guess would perhaps earn us the title of unique, is that we try to eliminate that barrier of transportation. We just bring the programs directly to the kids. So we'll do classes inside our trailer, in front of the trailer, in parks, in churches, in schools, in juvenile detention centers, basically anywhere we can occupy a space. We will do the classes. And I think also from a funding standpoint, if you donate to us, we don't have like a giant building that we have to pay a lot of money to upkeep. So our overhead is much smaller than most organizations because, again, we don't have a bunch of buildings and bathrooms to maintain and utility bills to pay. So I'd say that's hopefully what allows us to say we're unique.
Oh, that's so amazing and such an interesting way that you guys have come about. That's so unique. Wow. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Like my mind's going in a different direction, like 1,000 different directions. Because I'm just like, whoa, like if one thing doesn't happen, like keep it going, and I'm just feeling really motivated by what you've said. And I hope that others feel a similar way, because I'm so glad that you did not stop at, oh no, the brick and mortar. I never realized that. I might have known how it kind of initially began from just knowing you, but I didn't know that that wasn't the idea really all along. And that's so cool, that like to hear the story of the success now, but it didn't always begin that way. And you turned something that was like a no in the moment into a unique opportunity.
Yeah, so it was actually, so Manchester Bidwell is a center in Pittsburgh, and it's an awesome center. Amazing. They do amazing work. And they provide arts classes for at-risk youth and job training for unemployed adults. And there's now, my last recollection, there's like 10 of them across the country, the closest being Cincinnati. And so we were going to try to have a branch here in Lexington. So actually for about 3 years, that was what we were pursuing. We had like every meeting possible. I met with everybody and their mother. We tried everything. But just coming at it from a grassroots angle, we just couldn't raise the kind of money you needed to like basically have a building from scratch. So yeah, for about 3 years, it was like running into a brick wall until we're like, wait a minute, what if we just pivot slightly? So yeah, it's been a fun journey.
Definitely. Well, actually, speaking of your journey and everything that led you to get here, in closing, I've got 2 questions that I wonder if others are dying to hear. 2 major
2
questions. One, do you have any visions for expanding, or do you see other different ways that you want to, tackle it going forward? Like a 2-year plan, and it's so cliche. Where do you see yourself in 2 to 5 years? But
Yeah.
as it pertains to your organization, do you have plans of expansion?
Yeah, so actually at the moment we have 1 trailer in operation, and then we have a 2nd trailer that's being renovated. So the hope is by the end of summer, we'll have 2 trailers that can be going out. My hope is that we'll be able to one day stumble upon a big grant that would allow us to replicate this even more, because again, it doesn't take that much money in terms of dollars that are usually spent on things like this. So I can see, like, my vision would be in 5 years, we'd have like 5 trailers all going out. Like there would be essentially almost like a bus system where we have a central hub and they just all go out and then they come back at night,
Wow.
That would be the hope. So that's what I'm hoping.
Wow. Well, I would love to see this be the case in other locations, because I feel like there's so many children that can benefit from this, and the children that you're able to work with right now and have them, be able to do art in such a very like productive and creative way is like unprecedented. This is so important, and not just now because we're in a pandemic, but always that can shape the mind and an ideology in just a person, really, and who they become as they grow. And so I really appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, this is, I was actually thinking that I asked a friend the other day, I was kind of marveling at the creative genius of Pharrell. And I was thinking, I made the comment, I was like, can you imagine if somebody like Pharrell didn't have art class as a kid?
Right.
Like Pharrell is literally one of the most creative individuals of all time, one of the best producers of all time, and has transformed modern music. Can you imagine if they didn't have art class? Like, what if he didn't have the things that eventually sparked that?
Right.
And that's the sad thing, is that a lot of Title I schools don't have an arts program anymore because it's like, oh, well, it's not standardized testing and stuff. And it's like, good God, like, again, just think, like, imagine Pharrell never has art class. All he has is like math and science, which are important. I don't want to discredit those. But good God, there's so many creative people out there. And I know a lot of them got their start in tinkering around in different arts classes. So
well said.
That's just a thought I had. Yeah.
And no, I love that thought. Like, I completely think that's genius, because goodness, it's an outlet for so many people, and it could be an escape, from harm, or it can be a way to figure out something you never knew you had. And if all of it's taken away, then how do you go about kind of wiggling through life, and searching in your avenues? And for all of our creative geniuses out there today, and just everyone has it in them to some degree, for this to not even be in the norm is really sad, and that it's just like seen as like a side thing, an extra, but really this is what gets our mind to feel alive.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Yep.
So I think that's so, oh man, that's a really good example. I definitely love the song Happy and all the things.
Oh man, yeah.
And so I wanted to really ask you, for someone listening, how can they get involved, and like, what are ways that they can be like, absolutely love this, and what can I do? What would you say for that?
Yeah, I'd say, there's the simple things like, of course, liking us on Facebook and following us on Instagram. Those show support. Then there's the next levels of we need lots of volunteers. So on our website, there's a tab that says Get Involved, and there's an avenue to get involved and to volunteer. So you can become a volunteer. You can send us a message through the website. We have like a little contact form. So volunteering, if there's artists out there that would like to lead classes, we are able to provide small stipends to different artists who lead. And then, of course, donations. We are a nonprofit, so anything from donating supplies to donating money would be awesome. We even have like a Patreon account where you can sign up to give like $2 a month to us. And it comes out automatically. It's like a one-time thing. And my hope is we get like 200 people on there, each giving like $2 a month. That'd be awesome. Patreon is what it's called. So I'd say those are some of the different ways. Just contact us and let's collaborate.
I absolutely love it. And gosh, this has been absolutely incredible. I'm so glad I got to feature you, and great work with everything that you've done and created with On the Move Art Studio. I'm really excited to see what's more, because already you've served and worked with so many children, and there's definitely a need. And I'm really glad I got to be able to to have you express the need. So thank you so much.
Yeah. My pleasure. I mean, it's an honor to be on here. So thank you for what you're pursuing, Lauren, and thank you for having me on here and taking the time to hear my story and take such good care of it. So thank you, Lauren. It's a pleasure.
Well, really grateful for your time. And again, this has been Josh Nadzem speaking with me, Lauren, and he's representing On the Move Art Studio. And you can find out more information on www.onthemoveartstudio.org. So thank you, Josh.